So hello everyone, hello to the one who are here and hello to the ones who are watching this session online. So last time we saw the personnel administration, and today we are going to start with another unit which has a counterpart in paper 2, that is the financial administration, that is the part of paper 1, and financial management, that is the part of paper 2, right? And just like every time, we are going to see the highlight areas of the units, and through that we'll try and zero down on the agenda. Apart from that, as always, I'll try and give you certain scholarly perspectives which can come in handy. Now, if you look at the nature of these units, there are a few things that actually stand apart. The first thing is the contemporary nature. You will see that many questions will be based on the issues that have been flagged in recent times. Okay. The second nature of this is the application orientation. That means that the questions which are being asked from these units are highly application oriented. That means you will have to use deductive logic to answer those questions. It cannot be something which is a textbookish or a note style answer. So that is something which is a given when it comes to these units. Also, like I said, in both the papers, you will have to balance it out. That means the conceptual orientation is needed. More so in paper 1, a little less in paper 2, but that would be balanced by the practical orientation. For example, how things work in Government of India, and I am not talking about examples. Okay, so you might have to use certain articles of the Constitution, right? More so in paper 2, whereas a bit lesser amount in paper 1, but the concept has to be there. If you look at the paper 1, over the past 8 years, roughly 40 marks on an average. And paper 2, would again mean roughly 20 to 25 marks. So that means around 60 marks can be easily garnered. Why easily? Because a lot of the ideas which we apply in paper 1 and paper 2 with regards to financial administration and financial management comes from polity and economics. Sorry, vis-a-vis general studies. Now, what you have to do is take this up and dress it up with pabadishness. Thoda dhaniya, thoda mirchi, okay? And you can serve it. In many cases, you can do it. It is just that instead of finding the generic polity or economics oriented dimensions, we will have to look at the administration oriented dimensions. Okay. Now, if you look at the questions are largely based on, and I'll read them out for you, move in and around the classical aspects: budget, monetary and fiscal policy, and their qualitative aspects, for example, debt, borrowing, and aspects related to accounts and audit. Okay, generally it is like this. Something with which a limited set of notes, limited set of conceptual clarity you can easily handle. Alright. So this is largely about these units. I'll be referring to the PYQs and then we'll be extracting some of the ideas. And you will see that most of them will fit into these aspects. Okay. So paper 1 first. 2016 it was 50 marks which came. And look at the way questions are twisted. Now here the brownie point comes in to the play when you go beyond the notes. If you will write the notes, you will get some marks. But the point is that they are not going to be very wholesome. Just the regular marking type, 30%, 35% marks for every question. So it is important that you use deductive logic, you use examples, you use case studies, illustrations to cement your point. Also, especially writing paper 1, public, financial administration, it is important that we use certain thinkers. We have had so many thinkers who have emphasized on budgeting. Whether you take the POCCC aspect, post-decorb aspect, the economic efficiency aspect, that is there in Taylorism as well. Okay, so all those things. So the question reads, public borrowing produces different effects on economy. I mean, this is a kind of a question which can pass off even in general studies. Okay. In every question, whether the word administration or public administration is mentioned or not, you will have to assume that it is mentioned. Okay, then only that orientation will come. So always assume that there is public administration somewhere hidden in the question, even if not explicitly it is mentioned. So it says public borrowing produces different effects on economy. Simple. Why the state borrows? Okay, it is not the classical sense in economics. Why the state borrows, how the administration utilizes it, goods delivery, public services, welfareist orientation. So these words should be there in your answer. Next. Fiscal policy and monetary policy are the two tools used by the state to achieve its macroeconomic objectives. Examine the statement and point out the differences between the tools. So it is using policy as a means to end. So a bit of policy orientation. You can simply come up like this, that public policy, you can use the statement of a thinker, right? And then say that fiscal and monetary policies are one of the most significant public policy because they help drive other policies forward. So you have provided that PABAD orientation. Okay, next. The key to understanding performance-based budgeting lies beneath the word result. in the light of the statement, examine the elements of performance-based budgeting. So your performance-based budgeting, traditional elements will actually come in this place. Okay. Next, budgeting is a political process, and they have given the name Aaron Wildavsky. Okay. So this budget as a political process is something that is given in the syllabus, right? Also, Wildavsky is somebody who is famous for this aspect, but can you find other thinkers? We'll see. Okay. Next, a large public debt forces the adoption of tax and spending policies that result into higher taxes and reduced services. So again, on the qualitative aspects, the question is there. Logic, which flows of economy and how it impacts administration. There can be no performance auditing without performance budgeting. How the budget lays the ground or finalizes the criteria for the auditing, because it is result orientation. So 2017, again you saw that it is of 35 marks. Come 2018, 30 marks total, 15 each. Monetary policy of the country can help or hinder development process. How it is a tool to direct the development administration. Okay. Sound performance auditing is impossible without systematic performance or outcome budgeting. You see, this question was asked in 2018. Right? And 2017, there can be no performance auditing without performance budgeting. Aren't the questions are the same? They are almost exactly the same. Next. Is William Niskanen's budget maximizing model relevant for today? So it is using public, choice approach and all those things here. So this interconnection is something that is very vital. 2019 this question was, and 2019 saw this unit coming in of 50 marks in paper 1. Another question. Again, something that they are stuck with the performance. Performance measurement remains an emerging issue, but it is relegated to exclusively monitor and assess the use of funds. In light of the statement, discuss various non-financial parameters of performance measurement to evaluate public sector organization. Okay? So for example, you provide a banking service or a financial inclusion service in remote part of Ladakh or Northeast or island territories. Yes, you will have to employ certain people in those offices, whether that is even post office or a small bank branch. Clearly, that bank branch is not good enough to sustain its own expenditure, in the sense that those are poor people, pastoral people. They won't take much loans. Right? Nor heavy business transactions are being carried out, but they do serve a public purpose. They connect them to the financial system that helps the transmission of subsidies. Okay. So the point here that I want to make is that go into the qualitative aspect. There is a reason that there is a public sector. Next question. Discuss the major areas of change in the tax reforms in the post-liberalization era. How do you justify the importance of direct tax reforms? So again, your fiscal policy, tax policy has come in. Remember, 2019 was an era when GST etc. were coming up in a big way. Next, 2020. Fiscal policy should address the issue of inequity, intricacy and obscurantism. Explain. Again 2020. So 2020 they kept it mild, 25 marks, a 10 marker and a 15 marker. The point I want to say is generally a 10 marker is there. That too in the second part of the question, that is question number 5. So you cannot escape, better do it. Objectives of performance budgeting include improving expenditure prioritization, effectiveness, efficiency. Has performance budgeting worked effectively in governmental system? Argue. So through these questions also you can see that how they have provided a Pabadish character to the question itself. The prioritization, effectiveness, efficiency. Similarly, you will have to provide that Pabadish character in the answers. Next, 2021. Emphasis on cost control and reducing public expenditure has diverted the focus of government budgets from basic objectives of reallocation of resources, bringing economic stability and promoting social equity. Again, the political school of budgeting. No theorist has been used. Only the practical aspects of budgeting has been put under the lens. Next again, 2021, 35 marks were there. No 10 marker this time. Zero-based budgeting was intended to get away from incrementalism, invoke policy incrementalism. But this approach being the most incremental of any budgetary approach. So it is looking at the approach, the psychology, the theory behind it. Next, 2022, fairly spread, 35 marks. It was 55 marks. Okay, look at the questions. Standards are the foundation which do not replace regulation but complement them. What standards? Performance standards, budgetary standards. So an abstract question like this. This can be clubbed with the regulation as well, right? So you can reduce it if you want, 45 marks, but still I would look at it from very much from the public policy and financial angle. Next, outcome budgeting addresses the weakness of performance budgeting. So the comparison between budgets. Next, a sound budgeting system is one which engenders trust among citizens that the government is listening to their concerns. Elaborate this in the context of budgetary governance. Budget being a political instrument, application orientation. Next, 2022. The audit function has always been viewed as an integral part of government's financial management. Discuss the significance of internal audit in improving performance. Simple auditing. 2023, 45 marks again. Monetary policy and fiscal policy are different, but both used to regulate economy. Remember a question I talked about wherein they were being talked about as the tools. Same question. Zero-based budgeting is based on program efficiency rather than budget history. In light of this statement, examine the zero-based budgeting over traditional budget. Again, comparison. Next, management of sound public finances used to be the backbone of administrative system, but unfortunately it has become the prisoner of populist policies. Again, the political context of budgeting, monetary and fiscal policy, critically evaluate. Okay. So I hope through this you have understood that what are the areas that are being frequently touched upon by this unit. Okay. Next, let me traverse you through the paper 2 and see immediately you will find that there is a practical angle which is coming to the fore. 2016, the question was on GST. Introduction of GST no doubt has economic benefits, but tends to compromise states' inherent right to impose taxes. In this context, comment on the changing nature of union-state financial relations. So some of you can actually slot this question with the union government and state government administration unit as well. But I thought it is prudent to slot this with financial management. Justify budgetary support to nationalized bank to overcome the crisis resulting out of NPAs, non-performing assets. Contemporary. What merits do you foresee in the proposed merger of railway budget and general budget? Contemporary. The initiative of Income Tax Department to disclosure of black money has had a mixed response. 2016. Do you agree that 7th Pay Commission's recommendation do not reflect and correlate the need for civil services reforms and accountability with increased pay? This is 7th Pay Commission. You can practically put this question with any pay commission. This was 2016, friends. And a massive 70 marks were devoted to this. So that actually also burst the myth that certain units cannot actually overwhelm when it comes to marks distribution. They can. 2017, just a 10 marker. The office of CGA, Controller General of Accounts, is expected to strengthen public financial management system in India. Simple. Straight from your notes. Next, 2018, 20 marks. Gender budget requires rethinking beyond allocations to become a powerful tool of gender mainstreaming. Social audit has lent a critical edge to implementation of programs such as Manrega. 2019, again just a 10 marker. The strategy to deal with non-performing assets of banks may lead to overburdened taxpayers. Similar stuff was asked in 20 something in paper 1. Budget is an indicator of financial health of a polity which is reflected in statement of income and expenditure. Now, if you will see closely the way these questions are framed. First of all, 2016 was very heavy. Now the trend is declining because a major chunk is shifting towards paper 1, which is asking both contemporary and the theoretical aspects in fusion. Okay. Also, if you see the questions in paper 2, they are abstract, analytical. What does budget do? Type questions. Mind you, in both, you can use a bit of thinkers and scholar statements, and that will benefit. Next, the Office of Comptroller and Auditor General of India stands as the pillar of autonomy. Discuss the major lacunae. Okay. 2021, 10 marks again. The government policy of large-scale privatization of key sectors of economy may affect India's economic health. 2022, you can also link this question with board and commissions. Examine the role of Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI, in protecting the interest of investors in security. 2022, CAG is today a primary cause of widespread and paralyzing unwillingness on part of government institutions to decide and act. 2023, 30 marks. Computerization of treasuries has revolutionized the accounting and budget planning process. Bottom-up budgeting, sector-specific budget management, all those things will come here. Last, accountability of executive to parliament in the domain of financial administration is secured through CAG. So, time and again, CAG, CGA, some sort of a budgeting, right, or the contemporary aspect like taxation, etc. are being asked in paper 2. So, with this learning, let us now take up financial administration and management. I hope that I need not tell you the difference between administration and management. That is something which is pretty clear to all of you. You see, when we talk about finance, even you see the grand treatise on administration and statecraft, Arthashastra, was named Arthashastra. Arth, money, finance. Right? So, while dealing with administration, finance is the lifeblood of any organization. Because without finance, nothing moves. You cannot even have proper planning without finance. What will you plan against? What will you plan for? I mean, look at it at the basic unit of administration, your homes. Each home has an income. They have a budget on how they spend, how they go on holidays, what they wear, what they eat. So finance is the lifeblood of any organization. And when we talk about financial administration, it is the administration here. A system which generates, regulates and distributes the financial resources. For what? For organizations to sustain, to thrive, to progress. So, if we look at financial administration, it's a subset of the larger administration. A financial system is the subsystem of a larger administrative system. You see, Lloyd George, you know Lloyd George, किसी को पता है Lloyd George कौन था? David Lloyd George. Anybody? He was a British Prime Minister. So he said, government is finance. And this is right, because no administration can function without the finance. The success of the administration depends on the extent upon the availability of finance. Because without finance, the administration of all the duties, of all the functions which are to be performed by the state cannot be performed in an efficient manner. Therefore, you see, even the second ARC in India, Hoover Commission in US, keep finance at the core of administration. They say that the financial administration is the core activity of the administration. If you look at Fayol, and he identifies certain activities which are critical to administration. He also lays emphasis on finance. Technical functions, commercial functions, control functions, managerial functions, security functions, financial functions. Also, with regards to this, Fayol says that all the other functions will come to a halt if the financial function gets compromised. Morstein Marx. Not Karl Marx. Also talks about the financial administration, that it is like a fuel to the administration. It is like a fuel to the administration. So the definition of financial administration is nothing but finance and administration. Okay? So we can say a set of activities relating to making available finance to different kinds of branches of an organization or within an organization so that they can carry out their objectives. So, when you look at public administration, collection, preservation and distribution of public funds. How? Through public revenue and expenditure. Willoughby write down the statement. Sound financial administration is of paramount importance. Sound financial administration is of paramount importance to the economic health of a country. Why? So again, I would invoke the reference of our dear neighbor, Pakistan. And I really appreciate the prophetic qualities that the late Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had. He said that we will have to eat grass, we will eat grass, but we'll have a bomb. So see what is happening. They have a bomb and they are eating grass. So with this statement of Willoughby, you see, financial administration is paramount importance to the economic health of a country for the reason that the moment economic health goes down, the people are going to be in crisis. Why? Availability of resources will be less, availability of essentials will be less, whatever will be available will be at an enormous cost, there will be low levels of employment, low levels of development, hyperinflation. What are we seeing in Pakistan or for example Argentina at the moment? And what happened? The credibility and the trust of the people in the state goes down. Why? Because state, society, principal agent, it's a relationship of trust, and the state has been entrusted with the function to allocate resources, to allocate values, to harmonize the competing interests, work in the interest of the society. If the state is not able to manage its finances and the society is getting inconvenienced, obviously the trust will go down. Right? So, clearly it's a very much correlated. Okay? L.D. White says fiscal management includes those operations. Fiscal management includes those operations designed to make funds available to the officials and to ensure their lawful and efficient use. Also, he says that every administrative act has its financial implications, either creating a charge on the treasury, that means taking money out of treasury, or making a contribution to it. Okay? So financial administration in one sense is being equated to financial management, because all aspects of the financial management is what? It is the financial administration. So if we were to arrive at a comprehensive idea of what financial administration is, that it would include all the activities to generate, regulate and distribute monetary resources that are required for the sustenance and growth of the members, that is the society. So you will have revenues and expenditure, taxation, etc., as part of it. So what does a basic financial administration would entail? Basic pillars. Remember, we are talking about financial administration. So, underhand, it is the administration. The elephant in the room is administration. Broadly, in the simplistic sense. So, it will involve a budget, its legitimization via a process. Then you will execute the budget. Okay. Apart from this, there will be treasury and its management. How much is coming in, how much is going out. So the accounting, the borrowing has to be legal, the deposition has to be legal, etc. And the auditing. Right? Now conceptually, if we look at the financial administration and public administration, they are closely linked. Why? Because every administrative act has a financial dimension. Okay? So that is there. Also, if you see that the financial administration is very much related to the administrative organization and the relationships that are present there. your taxation machinery, tax administration, your revenue administration, your expenditure administration, your execution administration, all of it are related. Okay. So, what all does financial administration entail in terms of the administrative aspects? That means there should be a unity and integrity of the organization, the financial administration. There has to be a coordination between the activities of various agencies and the evaluation of the financial acts. Also, it has to be legal. They should comply. Every act of financial administration should be legal. It should comply with the laws passed by the legislature. For this, what happens? The legislature uses the audit machinery. Since it is administration, we are looking at efficiency, effectiveness, economy. Also, when we are looking at administration to serve public interest, it should be responsive, quick, simple. There is a regulatory angle which also comes into the picture. Also, there is an element of accountability and control because money is involved and it is the public money. What kind of personnel will you need? In general, obviously, honest persons with integrity, capability. Also, the various agencies that are involved. Legislature for legitimizing, executive for framing the policy. Okay, you will need ministries, you will need an audit organization. You will need independent watchdogs, standard settings authority, record maintenance authorities. So all these agencies will be needed. है ना? I hope this is clear. You see, the laissez-faire idea and with the welfare and with the modern idea transitioning from one to another. If we look at the prevailing concept of minimum government, that would mean minimum taxation. Okay, so even in the laissez-faire era, pre-industrial revolution, the government was limited in functions and scope, and hence the taxation was limited. With the coming up of industrial revolution, actually, the importance of financial administration rises in the overall landscape of education, this public administration. Why? Because post the industrial revolution, rapid industrialization took place, which led to far more complex social interactions. Right? So with this industrialization and complex social interactions, the role of the state increased. and hence the importance of financial administration also increased. Now what happens in the welfareist era? Welfareist era was marked by an hyperactive state. The philosophy meant that the state will be everywhere. Okay? The state will be everywhere in every aspect to ensure welfare of the citizens. And hence we see the importance of financial administration rising even further. Why? Because now to carry out this welfareist agenda, much more amount of resources were required. The public expenditures were increased. And it was the responsibility of financial administration, or it came upon the shoulders of financial administration to look how more can be done, more welfareist orientation can be achieved. How to generate more resources, how to allocate them better. So to bring about policies that help the government mop up the resources and spend them in a judicious manner to achieve those policy goals, for example, equity, development, etc. So if you see in India, this era was also marked by, the welfareist era was also marked by the planned development. So link it with the planning unit. So this era of welfare, where multiple things had to be realized as part of the welfare measures, administration had to come in, and the fuel was the financial, the money aspect was the fuel, so that the projects get implemented in time and are cost effective, etc. So the element of financial administration came in. So from fund collection and distribution, the role got further complex vis-a-vis the fund management as well. And therefore, you see, it gives rise to various things, for example, performance budgeting, outcome budgeting, etc. Right. I hope this is clear, that I will not get very specific with regards to these budget types. Those are some things which are already given in your syllabus. These are some things which are already in your notes. So if I put up a question, that the importance of financial administration, the importance of financial administration has increased over time and continues to get increased. Discuss. Okay, so this was your homework. All right, this is your homework. Now, Gaston rather. Actually tries and encapsulate various aspects of financial administration. Those are collection, preservation, and distribution of public funds. Collection, preservation and distribution of public funds. Coordination of public revenues and expenditure. Why I am making you write all this is for the fact that most of you know stuff, but you lack, or you face challenges in providing that pub-adish nature to your answers when it comes to this unit. So these things will help you there. Coordination of public revenues and expenditure. Management of credit operations. Management of credit operations. Management of credit operations on behalf of the state. General control over the financial affairs of the government. General control over the financial affairs of the government. In turn, you can add, this is what Gaston says, you can add and link it, the financial administration, with the ideas like autonomy, accountability, control, etc. Okay? So while the fiscal policy is one aspect, so is the idea of fiscal accountability and fiscal management. Fiscal accountability and fiscal management. Then of course there is a process, the entire value chain. You prepare the budget, legalize it by legislative sanction, execute it, manage the treasury, accounting, reporting system, auditing system, all of it forms the part of auditing. Or financial administration. Okay. Now, some perspectives on the monetary policy. There is a definition by H.G. Johnson. A policy employing the central bank's control of the supply of money employing the central bank's control of the supply of money as an instrument for achieving the objectives of general economic policy. General economic policy. Now you see, this particular definition by Johnson is good for the developed West. But in countries like India, can it remain? Yes, the primary role is the control of the money supply. But can it remain confined to only the supply of money? in the developing world we are not being, we are not using the monetary policy to bring about a tool of development, then we are not using it to full potential and we are not using it the right way. We are just limiting its role. So the bank's policy, the central bank's policy is contingent upon the levels of development. That's the insight that I want to bring about. And it has to work to aid the development in the geography it is concerned. For the developing nature of the economy. So instead of just the money supply in a developing world, this monetary policy will also have to take care of the price stability, employment, growth of the economy. So the nature and the work gets far more sophisticated and diversified. Also, if you look at the monetary policy, the perspective with or the purpose does not remain the same throughout. It changes. It has to be ecological. It has to be sensitive towards the environment, both national and international. You see how RBI will not be very liberal to reduce rates because it thinks that there would be inflation. Especially why? Because let us say in the case of Russia-Ukraine conflict, the supply chains are already stretched. There is already inflationary, pressure. So this will further aggravate the situation. Okay. So that is also a role. Earlier there were gold standards. So the monetary policy was heavily influenced by the gold standard, but now it is no more. Now we have the foreign reserves. Okay. So that is there. So monetary policy has also evolved. Now it is concerned with balance of payment, equilibrium, promotion of savings, how to develop the money markets, how to help the weaker sections of the society. And the monetary policy is getting closely linked with economic growth, price stability, etc. Okay. Next is the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy. If you look at the fiscal policy, it is mainly concerned with the revenue and expenditures of the government, that is the treasury or the exchequer. Right? So that will incorporate public debt. Okay? That will incorporate public debt, borrowings, etc. Okay. Also, it is the policy for the government to raise revenues. Why? Because government is a political entity and administration serves the citizen oriented goal. The wealth distribution or redistribution in light of values such as equity, welfare for all, determines the government to exercise certain policy. Okay. Also, government has to make expenditure, development expenditure. So you raise revenue, levy taxes, both direct and indirect, carry out public expenditure. So it is more about raising and spending of the financial resources, allocation of those resources between various sectors, and debt operations to actually aid the economic development of the country, the socio-economic development of the country. So public expenditure, public debt and taxes are the major areas that the fiscal policy deal with. Also, you see, fiscal policy is the ultimate act of institutionalization. Institutionalization of certain systems within the administration. The institutional aspects of government finance, tax system, budgetary system, expenditure system. Okay. And the fiscal policy comes out through generally government budget. That will include wages of employees, creation of new infrastructure and whatnot. Also, fiscal policy is closely linked with the overall finances in the country. That means financial administration related to things like inflation, availability of resources, etc., etc. Okay. There is always a recognition lag. The fiscal policy is sometimes or most of the time late in responding to the demands. Also, there is a lag when it comes to financial operations, that we might start operating today, but we'll see the fruits after many months. And hence, it requires administration more to plan stuff meticulously, to look at all the aspects. You see, also when it comes to debts and borrowings, borrowings, we are looking at an unbalanced. That means income and expenditure are not the same. Income might be less, but the expenditure might be more. And it is through the fiscal policy that debts and borrowings get facilitated. Why? To improve the socio-economic growth. But what happens? Generally, the public debt, if it goes beyond the sustainable levels, especially who will need the public debt more? You have developed and developing. It will be developing who will need public debt more vis-a-vis the developed. Developed also need it, but vis-a-vis the development to bring about socio-economic development. Now this debt, if it goes beyond sustainable levels, has implications. It leads to contraction, the reverse effect. So you see the condition of Pakistan, Sri Lanka, etc. What happened? That their debt has gone beyond the sustainable levels. Okay? Because the public debt has to be paid. Some economists like Adam Smith actually talk about how public borrowing would end up forcing the government to tax the public, and it will lead to disequilibrium in the economy. But J.M. Keynes was in favor of the public borrowing as a means of raising national income and increasing economic output and employment. Keynesian economics, we all study the Great Depression in 30s and all that. Okay, so you can link this with other contemporary debates like the stuff related to freebies, that if you are raising a public debt and you are not actually using it for purposes that will help you sort of generate more wealth, rather than push it down the drain in terms of populism, it can really lead to problems. It can lead to problems such as unsustainable debt, and then it will have a completely opposite effect as you were envisaging it. So government raises debt when it wants to increase the outlays in public sector projects, whether infrastructure, welfare, etc. Also to tackle the unforeseen circumstances, wars, floods, emergency, etc. So while the public debt meets the short-term demand, it should be temporary. So it can have consequences like price rise, etc. Okay. Now there can be various forms of public debt. Why I am coming up to this? Because the rising debt in the neighborhood, especially Pakistan, China, they are creating problems for the administration. And I sense that public debt is something, it's just a hunch, obviously, that will be remaining a focus area, because India has contributed in terms of development to these countries. Also, vis-a-vis the Paris plan for restructuring of Sri Lankan debt, so on and so forth. So there is public debt classification. They are self-explanatory. So I won't be getting into a lot of details for it. For example, reproductive and unproductive debt. Reproductive will be that you are using the debt to produce capital assets. Okay, that is there. Unproductive debt is something that is used to cover the deficits which are already there. So it does not provide any income to the state. So you end up filling that debt. It might provide you temporary relief, but you end up paying the debt, also the interest on that debt. There is no asset which gets created. So the enhanced public borrowing, if the debt is being used for unproductive purposes, then it is a bad economic policy or bad financial administration. This is what I wanted to drive the point, so that you can use these terminologies effectively in the examination. Okay. Long-term debt, short-term debt, voluntary debt, compulsory debt, funded and unfunded debt, marketable, non-marketable debt, cross debt, net debt. Also, simplistically, if we see whenever expenditure is greater than revenue, you add debt to somehow balance it out. Also, how the economics works: aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So if the demand is going to be more than the supply, it's going to be inflationary. So the government can withdraw the money to curb the aggregate demand and in turn curb the inflation. So debt is also used as a tool to control inflation. It helps, like I said, with the capital assets. Also, it fills in the temporary need for additional resources. So whether it can be domestic borrowings, savings from the budget, right, deficit financing, okay, those things are used. So with regards to the debt, this is something that I wanted to convey. Okay. Next, I want to take up a substantial idea about budget. You see, budget is what? Simplistically, it's a plan of action of quantitative nature. Since it's legal, it helps in control, coordination, organization of activities, implementation. It is sanctioned by the competent authority or the legislature as well. So it's a financial quantitative statement. Its financialist character. Now what is the nature? It is prepared before the time of the implementation, that is before the policy is to be implemented. It is for a specific period of time and it clearly lays down the objectives. Now please understand, a very specific formula approach that I am giving you, no book will have it. This is what budget is. If I say budget is a political document, just link it with elements of public policy, okay, and the idea of post the corb with B actually supporting the rest. Then it will become the administrative. So it's like, various levers, you have to balance this. Whatever be the question, these are the elements, simply balance it by the arguments, increase some, decrease some, right? Increase something else, decrease something else. This is how you can balance any kind of question with regards to a theoretical view. Okay? Also, you see, budget is not a new idea. Budget has always been there, and it is all pervasive in every organization. At the starting of the session, I talked about how even a family, has a budget. Right? How even a family has a budget. Also, if you look at Arthashastra, financial reporting has been given a lot of emphasis. If you look at the Mauryan administration, the Mughal administration, even Guptas, Cholas, right? Then the colonial administration, it was largely about the finance. The word budget comes from a French word, boget. So there used to be a leather pouch in which the papers used to be carried. So to the House of Commons, somebody was carrying the papers, the finance minister or the chancellor of exchequer, as it is called in UK. Right. So 1733, Robert Walpole, financial plan. And then he opened that baguette, and from that the budget word actually came. How? Because it is this very budget that directs the operations of the state, that directs the mopping up of resources, that directs the expenditure patterns, and that is why it is political in character. Okay, I hope you have understood this framework. This framework is vital, so simple yet so effective if you can play with it in the examination. Okay. So, these financial budgets are, like I said, very old. The sources of legitimization can differ. Obviously, the king in consultation with the minister used to decide everything. Then the popular representation came about and it acquired popular characteristics. But they exercise as tools to regulate, to control the operations is something that has always been there. The idea of every budget at a very base level is to balance the revenue and expenditure, the tax operations and the expenditure. In modern day welfarist societies, it would be about development as well. Because the annual income and expenditure of the government, like I said, is the lifeblood of the organization, without which it will not sustain. So there are various views. Wildavsky, through questions right, so I will not get into it. Even if you look pre-2016 era, Wildavsky has been asked time and again. Okay. So Wildavsky defines budget as a series of goals, with price tags attached. A series of goals with price tags attached. Right? Democ, very own Democ of the Democ and Democ duo. A budget is a financial plan. Look at it very carefully. A budget is a financial plan summarizing the financial experience of the past, stating the current and projecting over a specified period of time in the future. So if you look at budgeting in India, you can actually use DMOC there and then say that okay, it requires past year, current year and next year. Always, right? ठीक है. Also simplistically, according to Lynch, budget is just about money, right? I mean, he's a no-nonsense guy and he says that it's all about money. There are multiple subjects which are there, but it is the money which is at the center. And they are seen in relation to the money and are translated into money. Willoughby actually looks budget with a broader view, beyond just revenue and expenditure. He sees it as a report, as an estimate, as well as a proposal. Okay? A report, an estimate, as well as a proposal. So you can use all these logics to look at budget as a political document. Of course, Willoughby is there, and if a statement relating to Willoughby comes, think it like this. But try and see the statement in this framework and just quote the scholar and you can very intelligently weave an answer. Okay. Also you see, budget is a tool of legitimization. Once it is legitimized, it gives authorized or it authorizes certain authorities to either spend or collect revenues. Budget is not merely the Revenue or the Appropriation Act or the Finance Act. It is an administrative act. It is an act of administration. It is also a way to put facts related to administration vis-a-vis collection and usage of funds towards the citizens. No taxation without representation, the importance of legislative scrutiny of budgeting, all that are there. Also, budgets, like I said, are a tool for financial control. But for that, there has to be good management. Like Willoughby is saying that budget or budgeting rather is dressed with the trappings of professionalism and expertise, but it is also a system of values and politics. It's the financial blueprint of action. It should not be considered as a balance sheet. Right? So I hope you are understanding the difference, that it's a financial blueprint of the governmental or the administrative action. It is not a balance sheet. Now, why administration is an inherent part of the budget? Or what characteristics of budget make it an administrative document? Should I raise this framework? Why we are talking about budget as an administrative document? We have discussed enough about the political aspect. Obviously, there would be hybrid aspect present in both politics and administration. But why are we calling budget as an administrative document? It is systematic. It's an organized plan of execution. See the administration elements that I am highlighting. Also, it is a product of what? Political, social, economic aspects of society. Administration क्या था? यही तो था. And it reflects the economic ideology of country. You can use, like I said, both these points in both administrative as well as the political aspects. It is not a preliminary idea throwing. It is a plan of action. It is an act of planning. Why? It estimates the revenues. Yes, the actual figures might differ here and there, but it is an act of planning. So can you find, now please understand here, when I say this administration, budget is administration, then can I find the element? चलो B छोड़ दो, ये तो budgeting ही है. But can I find these elements or P, O, C, C, C here? Yes, I can. And this is the mental framework that I want you to build. That whenever I am talking about this, that it presents an estimate, that means some planning has been done. Okay. So what will be needed? There is a coordination which is needed between various ministries, departments, before budgeting, during the budgetary process, the coordination of legislature, the supervision of legislature is needed. It's a systematic, itemized, ministry-wise, head-wise things are given. You see various expenditures come in now. Finance Act, this Act come into the newspaper. If I take the policy view, there is an element of incrementalism in every budget. Because it will touch upon what is ongoing, how to improve. Some adjustments will be made. It's a time-bound plan. Generally, it's one financial year. In a parliamentary democracy, the legislature approves it. Okay. In comparative sense, if you will look, the French budgetary system is far more emphasizing on the element of control. But you see, so is the Indian budgeting system. But the modern trends in Indian budgeting system, why? Because we are a developing economy, we are a fast-paced economy focused on development. So a lot many powers have been delegated, decentralized. In countries like Netherlands, there are commercial principles which are applied to budgeting. So you can decrease the allowances easily. Even in India, you saw that there was this merging which was happening, bifurcation which happened in the history of the general budget and the railway budget. So the budgetary reforms also will fall the part of the agenda. I am not getting into it specifically because I want to present you with PABAD specific perspectives, but those things will remain. Like I said in the initial remarks, that we'll have to dress them up with public administration. Okay. You see, budget is again one of the very powerful tools in the hands of the administration. Why? Because it is a record of the past performance, a method of current control, and a projection for future. So what had happened, what is happening, and what will happen. So it provides an empiricism to the plan of action. Therefore, it is administration. है कि नहीं? है ना? So that is there. Also, since budgeting exercise, especially in democracies, is not done in secrecy, it acts as a tool for the citizen and administration to interact. So you would see before the budgeting, the finance minister would call industry bodies. There would be representations which are given by various civil society organizations, right? Other public spirited forums. There would be lobbying which would be done, obviously in a legal way, right? Influencing would be done, that allocate more for climate, allocate more for disabled, things like that. So it keeps public in light of the issues which our administration is facing and the remedial plan of action. So it acts as a tool for the citizen administration engagement as well. Okay, so that is there. What the government is doing, what it intends to do, etc. Also, it acts as a tool of legitimacy for the administration. What if during the budgetary process, the budget does not get passed? Then what it means? It means that the government falls. So this act of legitimizing the budget is also the act of legitimizing the administration. And if through the process a delegitimization happens, it also delegitimizes the nature of the government, the nature of the administration. You all know that politico-administration fusion is the reality. Also, it acts as a measure of accountability and control. I guess I've said this more than once before, but legislative accountability. So you would have seen the token cuts, other devices which are there in budgeting. Read Indian polity for that. It helps legislature, which is the collective embodiment of the sovereign will of the people through their representatives, to control the executive. So it is helping you with the entire life cycle of the exercise of sovereign control. There can be various committees, commissions and other bodies, for example CAG, etc., which helps in the financial control as well. And committee on budget and the various estimates are there, department relating standing committees are there, which goes in hand with the budget exercise. Also, it's a tool of management. Why? Because it involves planning, control, coordination, evaluation, reporting, estimation, review. And it is through these managerial innovations that we have come up with outcome-based budgeting, performance-based budgeting, zero-based budgeting, innovative ways of costing and analysis. Again, budget is a tool of planning, right? What are the goals, short term as well as long term? And directing the effort of the members of the organization here, the members of the government, to achieve those goals. It is administration. Samajh mein aaya? Are you guys getting it? So with this perspective, we have to add that Pabadish character. Why am I emphasizing again and again? Because a lot of you know these things, but you do not see it this way, the way I am trying to show you. Okay? Now, there are various types of budgets. Various types. So, we'll be talking a bit about them. Who formulates? So one would be an executive budget, the other would be a legislative budget. If the executive is framing it, right? I'm not saying who's legitimizing it, who's framing it. If the legislature is framing it, then it's a legislative budget. Okay? Then there is a board or commission type budget. Now what happens in US and UK, this is not applicable to India. There is a budgetary body largely associated with local governments and they frame the budget. Municipal governments basically. Okay? Then there can be, based on some technical details, for example tenure. It can be a full yearly budget, half yearly budget. So we have seen in history the tendencies of governments to go for tinkering with the timeline of 1 year. Annual, short term, long term budgets are there. There are countries which use both the types as well. Okay, so if you look at India's 5 years plan, it is what? It is an example of long term budget. I know. Then there are surplus, deficit, balanced budgets. Single and plural budget. For example, in India, we used to have a different railway budget and a different general budget. Okay, cash-based budgeting, revenue-based budgeting, development budgeting, performance budgeting. Now, with respect to types of budgeting, primarily things like performance budgeting, zero-based budgeting, outcome budgeting. Okay, gender budgeting. What are the types? Performance, zero-based budgeting, outcome budgeting, gender budgeting, green budgeting, right? And I will add more: sustainable budgeting, child budgeting. What I need from you is a comprehensive piece, roughly 100 to 150 words on each type, their positives, their negatives, and Indian scenario. Whosoever will give the best response will get a gift. What that gift is, I will tell later. You can ask about that gift only if you submit the response. So I need this from you. That's the second task for the day. Okay? Child budgeting, why? What is the consciousness? What is the sort of a theme behind, let us say, green or gender budgeting? Okay? Now, there are certain trends or principles of budgeting which I want to highlight. They have come about with time. They have gained an institutionalized character. You see, it is the legislature which approves the budget, which legitimizes the budget. The legislature has the power to reduce or increase the allocations. Theoretically. But theoretically you will see that the legislature is more into, practically you will see the legislature is more into reducing the amount of the budget. But the preparation of budget is largely executive's responsibility. Also, it is the executive which largely decides the allocation of money. Generally, the period is 1 year. In the long term case, in case of 5-year plans, we know the period. But the 5-year plans in reality do not sanction the funds for the entire period. Every year that is contributed to. Generally, a single budget is preferred, right? But in some countries, more than one budgets come. You can look at it both ways, horizontally as well as vertically. For example, sector-specific budget monitoring, bottom-up budgeting. The center union, the center, state and local have different budgets. Every state government also passes the budget now. In some countries, you have just one budget. Also, within horizontally now, earlier India used to have a general budget and the railway budget. I hope you are keeping a tab on the responses vis-a-vis things that are in news. For example, when this merger happened. With every budget, we see that there is an element of political control. That is the control of the treasury. In case of India, we can say Consolidated Fund of India. Okay? Normally, the budget should be balanced. If the budget is going to be a heavily deficit budget, it can have its own repercussions. But a slight deficit is acceptable. Okay? We should try and come up as near and as accurate with regards to estimates as well. Otherwise, what's the point of budgeting? Also, between budgeting, accounting and auditing, there should be a harmonization of standards. Otherwise, how will you actually evaluate what your budget is doing? The heads, the standardization, the record keeping should be there. Also, in a democratic society, in a society where the administration is a means to serve the society, the publicity of the budget is important so that people, media and other stakeholders can freely express their satisfaction, concerns, etc. The budget remains a confidential document only prior to its presentation. But once it is presented, it should not be a coterie of people who are actually privy to the budgetary provisions. Once it is presented, it should be known to all. Also, the way budgeting is done, it should be done in a manner that it is understandable, comprehensible by the common man. There should not be an element of window dressing, mystification, obfuscation, etc. Okay? It should give a complete, holistic, comprehensive and detailed pictures of the revenue and expenditure of the government. Whether it's debt, it's borrowings, receipts, appropriations, anything. Okay? There should be accurate and reliable estimates in the budget. Now, I will not go into the budgetary process, that there are departments in Ministry of Finance, etc., that prepare the budget, estimates are prepared, then the money bill is there, voting happens. Okay? Then once it becomes, it has a force of law, then the funds are appropriated. Let me talk about critiques of some form of budgeting so that you get an idea, and please make that note, because often the critiques are something that are difficult to be understood. The advantages are fairly easy. So with regards to the performance budgeting, the criticism, you see, not performance budgeting involves the quantification of ideas, because you will have to match that this was the quantity which was expected and this is what has been achieved. But not everything can be quantified. Not everything can be subject to the quantifiable evaluation. Also, in the pursuance of the quantifiable evaluation, can you measure the happiness of the people or satisfaction of the people in quantity? So, the performance budgeting obscures or undermines the qualitative characteristics of administration. Why am I bringing up this point? Because a lot of act of administration is intangible. It cannot be felt. It is not a production assembly line kind of an organization. There can be qualitative appraisal, but then the performance budgeting in isolation cannot be criteria. You will have to rely on many, subjective approaches like surveys, like interviews, etc. Also, the application, because of its quantitative character, is limited to fields like research, law, defense, etc. But in subjective areas, it fails. Also, how the budget is made, what is the level of departmentalization, organization behind it, agencies behind it, can you identify programs, policies, etc. Because you see that a lot many things happen on paper and they are justified. A good example would be that I remember that there was a case I was reading in, I don't know, remember Yojana or Kurukshetra maybe, regarding the constructions of Izzat Ghar, Swachh Bharat and the sanitation and the construction of toilets in rural areas especially. So there was a report that X number of Izzat Ghars have been created. Why? Because initially these many loans or grants which were to be given were disbursed. But has that actually happened? Okay. So your performance criteria will be here. Compliance. Then it will be a very abstract criteria. Has that happened? Chalo theek hai ji. We will verify through social audit or we will verify through on ground reporting or geotagging. That's fine. But how many? Can you actually use this metric to translate into lack of sanitation and consequent prevailing diseases because of lack of sanitation? Can you have a direct correlation? Yes, there is a direct correlation, but it is with the usage and how you go it. So into far more qualitative aspects. A lot many of them are using these Izzat Ghars, so-called Izzat Ghars, to store fodder or food for their domesticated animals, cows, goats, etc. They are not using it for the purpose that they were designed for, like a toilet. So on paper it will give an idea that okay, we have geotagged it, verified it, but has it been using it? So on performance budgeting criteria, it will be a very good criteria. But will it deliver actual performance? No. It won't. It cannot. So it fails to go into this qualitative aspects. Also, what is the nature of the departments and the agencies that are behind the budget? How well the departments are organized, how precise are the performance criteria? Is there an overlapping redundancy of function or synchronization? All of it also matters in performance budgeting. Okay, so linking of this is very important when you actually look for budgeting with contemporary example. Okay. Why am I saying this? Because when you will read the second ARC, you will find multiple techniques and multiple criticisms and multiple instances. Okay. Next is accounts and audits. And I will not go into CAG, CGA a lot. That is something that is given in your notes. You can study that. I will be looking at far more, specific example and link it with other aspects. For example, double entry bookkeeping in the interest of transparency, integrity and accountability. Because a very important part of the financial administration and management would be how the accounts are kept. The standards are followed or not. Okay? So there should be double entry bookkeeping so that any loss or any tampering cannot be allowed. Cash based system, accrual system, etc. How the audit was separated, that is something which I am not getting into. CAG audit, social audit, something that I have already hinted and delivered a lot. Okay, so you are expected to go through that, but come to me if you have any queries. Similar is the case of functions of CAG and CGA. I will not be getting into those aspects, for the reason that those are the standard variations which are there. Now, let me actually bring you to some aspects of the financial management as well. Is everybody getting that? Largely, if you see, these aspects are interrelated, both paper 1 and 2, that is the administration and management. But some specific aspects with regard to the financial management is something that I wanted to bring to your notice, so that it is a tad bit easier for you to revise that. Please remember, look at the legislative developments which have been in news. For example, the FRBM Act. You will get a lot of fodder to fire in the examination with regards to the fiscal responsibility, FRBM Act, your economic survey. It will give you a lot. Also, the report of the second ARC, which nonetheless I'll be discussing the significant portions of this. Okay, so that is something that we'll be talking about in the class, but still you are expected to keep a tab, and how to handle these questions is largely about the advanced aspects of this particular subject. Similarly, you can use the scholarly views which I have provided, whether that is of DIMOC and others, to define the budget, relate the political character, the framework which I have given. Please remember the constitutional dimensions vis-a-vis, let us say, Consolidated Fund of India, Article 266, Contingency Fund, Article 267. This is subclause 1. Then the public accounts will be 266 subclause 3. Okay. What are the basics? For example, treasury bills, etc. Right. With regards to the budget as a political document, please refer to the finance commissions, because in the unit of the union and state administration we have the finance commission there as well, but link it here with regards to recommendations, how the financial administration is happening for the national level, how much it is happening at the center, how much it is happening at the state. For example, there have been issues in the news about states being allowed to raise their own debt, to what extent they can allow. Okay, the nature of the central sponsor schemes, right? How the parliament actually goes about the budgetary process, the general discussion, vote on account, demand for grants, voting that happens, consideration and passing, what happens in the Rajya Sabha, right? All these technicalities, I hope all of you are aware, but still, it is my job to remind you of this. Okay? Then with regards to accounting techniques, cash based accounting, accrual basis, the difference between the two, just for the sake of knowledge. These are some things that you will find even in a not so great book like Aribam as well. Okay, just a basic understanding of it is something which is necessary. The role of CGA again is something that has not been asked a lot, but since CAG has been asked a lot in the recent times, it is important that we look at the role of CGA, the role and functions of both CAG and CGA. Okay. Also, the components with regards to what happens vis-a-vis, let us say, a part of the financial administration because of the changed role of the state as a facilitator, as a regulator, as an incentivizer in terms of tax ops. For example, there has been a PLI policy which is there, deficit financing, things like that. These terminologies you should know because they are of technical nature, right? So this is something that I wanted to flag with regards to this. Do make certain notes on the types of budgeting. One question on budgeting is something that I expect. Which budgeting they will ask, I do not know. Okay, so you better prepare yourself and I will give my inputs on that. So at least, seal that area, seal a 10 marker or a 15 marker. Okay, so that is something that you should do. Referring to the PYQs is something, I have read out the PYQs. Some of you have the PYQs as well. So do have a look at those PYQs and see how the dimensions are being asked, which are very contemporary nature. I have given you a framework as well. Do use that framework. Right. So before we part our ways for the day, if there are any queries that I can help you with. Nothing? Friends online? Nothing? Okay. All right. Thank you then. All the best. See you in the next class.